following announcement has been paid for by the new Howl Order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I'm your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, as we sit here at 4-9 on the precipice of a full reboot, and whatever that looks like, we'll see in the offseason. But we kind of have our vantage point of what we think it's going to look like. What it won't be is what this regime was, which was coach-centric, with most of the power being wielded by the head coach. And it's funny listening, I'm playing back the whole Happy Thanksgiving press conference when Ronald Rivera showed up here in January of 2020, and how Daniel Snyder sat there and told us that, you know, in his studies and his findings, that the coach-centric approach is what works best in the NFL. And that can't be further from the truth. I mean, coach-centric approaches rarely work. Now, there's the rare instance where it works, i.e. Bill Belichick, but a lot of that had to do with Tom Brady, right? Finding Tom Brady is what ultimately led to the success that the Patriots have had, or did have, rather, over a 2-decade span. Obviously, without Brady, they haven't had any success. They did go to the playoffs that first year without him, but they got blown out by 47 points or something crazy like that. And they haven't been back since, and they're one of the worst teams in football right now. So, and they haven't really done a great job of finding talent in New England. Let's be honest. The 49ers are one of the rare instances where the coach-centric approach has worked. They made Kyle Shanahan the man. He went out and got John Lynch. They've worked beautifully together. And I'm pretty sure Kyle has final say-so on all decisions that, you know, in regards to personnel and, you know, what direction they want to go in. He's listening to other people. He's taking input from John Lynch and others. And Lynch's voice may be, you know, similar in weight that it carries. However, they hired Kyle Shanahan first in San Francisco, and then he hired John Lynch. So in effect, he's the man in charge, right? And it's gone really well in San Francisco, obviously. But that's generally not the case. Usually when the coach-centric approach is given to a head coach like Mike Holmgren, you know, many years ago, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it didn't work here. And I've gone through one of the biggest reasons why the coach-centric approach rarely works in this league is because a GM is usually looking at an organization from a macro approach. And really, he's got to look at it from both perspectives, macro and micro. His job is to handle the day-to-day, you know, business of checking the waiver wire, you know, checking other teams, the pulse of other teams that may have players available, making phone calls, things of that nature. You know, crossing every T, dotting every I, that's the job of a GM during the course of a season, right? Guys are hitting the waiver wire. Other teams are making transactions. You need to be on top of that stuff in case there's a player that shakes free that you are interested in. Okay? You got transactions on your own practice squad, on your own roster, and things that you have to deal with on a daily basis. But really, the job of the GM is the overall health of the roster and the cap situation and draft picks and draft capital and navigating all of those things. And so you have a much bigger approach to what is being done than a head coach who is literally going day to day trying to figure out how the team is going to win the upcoming week, right? That coach can't think about April's draft. The GM should be thinking about April's draft while he's still focusing in on helping the team win in December. But he's also thinking about free agency in March. He's also thinking about, the draft in April. He's thinking about all kinds of things. It's hard to ask a coach to have that perspective of the future while juggling and trying to balance the need to win now, which is why you usually want that to be two separate entities. No matter the case, we could sit here and talk about all the failures of Ronald Rivera here in Washington, because there are plenty of them. There's a list of them. And we could go through them and we could assign a percentage as to what that contributed to the failure here in Washington. But to me, the biggest failure of Ronald Rivera in Washington isn't his inability to have this team prepared on a weekly basis. It isn't the slow starts to games, or even taking it a step further, the slow starts to seasons. It's not his poor in-game management, when to throw the challenge flag, when to call the timeout, etc., etc. To me, his biggest failure was the failure and the inability to find elite talent or attract it here to Washington. Now, the attracting part, I don't really hold his feet to the fire for that. He tried. It's not for a lack of trying. He went on world tours in the offseason, nationwide, doing every press run and every press kit you could do, whether it's Super Bowl Radio Row, or it's the week of the Super Bowl, or it's some random week in March, or some random week in May. He was doing his part to try to sell the fact that, hey, we're turning things around here in Washington. The culture's different. You want to be a part of this. He tried to be a used car salesman when it came to this organization. Nobody was buying what he was selling because there was still Daniel Snyder behind him, hovering over the organization like a dark cloud. No one was coming here. Translation. So as a fan of a small market NBA team in the Memphis Grizzlies, you already know you're not getting any big free agents to sign to come play for the Memphis Grizzlies. And most NBA teams realize that as small market teams. If you're the Oklahoma City Thunder, you're not getting anyone to come play for your team as a free agent. Nobody wants to go to Oklahoma City as a free agent. There's nothing to do in Oklahoma City, okay? So guess what? You're going to have to draft well because nobody's coming here on their own free will. And he knew that, or at least he should have, when he took this job. That said, you weren't going to get Aaron Rodgers or Matthew Stafford or any big name quarterback, Russell Wilson. You weren't going to get any of them to want to come here on their own volition. So you were going to have to draft well. And the biggest failure is that when Ronald showed up here in January of 2020, the best players on the team were Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Terry McLaurin. Those were the best players. They then added Chase Young in that first draft in 2020, and he was added to that list of players. As he is set to exit 4 years later, the best players on this team were, before the trade deadline, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Terry McLaurin, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young. The only players when he got here that had any trade value were Terry McLaurin, Montez Sweat, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Their first draft pick was Chase Young. They added him to the list. As he's getting ready and set to depart here, 4 years later, the only guys with any trade value, Montez Sweat, who has been traded, Chase Young, who has been traded, Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. Do you see the problem here? Okay? Do you see why this has been an abject disaster? We need not go any further. We could talk about the coaching staff and them not putting together a good enough staff. We could talk about so many different reasons as to why this didn't work. And like I said, there's a laundry list of reasons as to why this did not work here in Washington with Ronald Rivera. You could just start with, he's a mid-coach. His track record precedes him. But guess what? That's not the biggest reason why it didn't work here. They didn't get talent here that moved the needle. They got a bunch of pieces that were nondescript that you could get from anywhere. And we had high-level draft picks. We're talking first-round picks. We're talking second-round picks. We're talking third-round picks. Your first 2 days of the draft are so impactful because those are the guys that you should be relying on for the next 5 to 7 years. If you do it correctly, you're not going to be able to re-sign everybody, okay? But you want that problem to have. You want to have so much talent, so many guys that have outperformed their rookie contracts that you are dying to re-sign them, and you're going to re-sign some of them, and then there are going to be 1 or 2 guys that are going to be disgruntled because you didn't get to them, but that's the nature of the business. If you do it correctly, you're going to have some guys that leave and get paid big elsewhere because you did it the right way. I may have forgot a guy. When he first got here, Brandon Sheriff was also another guy that had value. Brandon Sheriff. He's been long gone. Left in free agency a couple years ago. Didn't want to sign here. Okay? Didn't want to forget him. But again, that speaks to the point that he didn't add any value to this roster, is essentially what I'm getting to. And whether it's Jamin Davis in the first round, whether it's Benjamin St. Juste and De'Ami Brown in the third round, whether it's, failed draft picks on guys that are no longer here, like Antonio Gandy Golden, and I get it, that's a 4th round pick. Still, 4th rounders should make it to the end of their rookie contract, barring that you find somebody else that's better than them and they get cut, right? Like your 4th round picks should be around for a while. He just wasn't any good, right? And this has been the problem with this regime. All too often we find ourselves trying to hype ourselves up about players who just aren't very good or aren't great fits for what they wanted to do here in Washington. And they overdrafted them. Look, we don't know what Fedarian Mathis is. What I can tell you is he's not a 2nd round pick. Never should have been. None of us liked the pick when they made it. They reached for Jamin Davis in the 1st round because they needed a linebacker. They didn't do anything else to help the linebacker position, I may add. But they took Jamin Davis in the 1st round because they needed a linebacker. There were plenty of options in that draft, including guys that I thought were better than Jamin, that you thought were better than Jamin Davis. You would not have had to spend a 1st round pick on, 19th I believe it was, that year in the draft. You would not have had to spend the 19th overall pick on to get him. I see JOK playing really good football for the Cleveland Browns right now. My favorite pick of that draft was the Mizzou linebacker that plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. They got him in the 2nd round. At the end of the day, the failure to draft difference-making players, whether it's the 1st round, the 2nd round, the 3rd round, the 4th round, some of the best players that they hit on, or some of the biggest contributors, were guys that they got in day 3, late in day 3, i.e. Cam Curl as a 7th round pick, or Derek Forrest as a 5th rounder. Like, these aren't guys that you're supposed to be relying on. These are guys that you hope can just contribute on special teams and maybe in a reserve role fill in and do an admirable job. These aren't guys you're supposed to be relying on. Yet those turned out to be some of the best players that they drafted. Meanwhile, the guys that they spent 1st round picks on, 2nd round picks on, 3rd round picks on, have turned into basic players. Dime a dozen guys you can get anywhere. I wasn't the biggest Benjamin St. Juste fan when they drafted him. He's solid, but I knew he wasn't a needle mover because he doesn't take the ball away. And look, you can force incompletions. Those are cool. But when you don't take the ball away, you give the opposition another opportunity to beat you. And he was grabby in college. He did a lot of face guarding. He's done it. It's amazing he doesn't have more penalties on his ledger. Like we always joke and kid about his ability to avoid penalties somehow, even though it seems like this guy has just gotten away with an egregious pass interference. He is who he is. Okay? Emmanuel Forbes, we don't know what he's going to be, and I'm not giving up on the young fella. And I don't know what Quan Martin is going to be. I'm not giving up on that young fella either. There's talent that exists with both of those young players. But you passed up a chance at Gonzalez to get Emmanuel Forbes because you wanted turnovers. He's got one interception this season, and he's dropped at least two of them. Okay? You drafted Quan Martin in the second round. Now, word out on the street was you wanted an offensive lineman. You wanted Steve Avila. He was gone. The Rams took him a lot sooner than you expected. There were opportunities to trade out of the pick, but you were hell-bent. No way, no how are we trading this pick if our guy, Quan Martin, is there in the second round. And you didn't have a plan for him. You was like, hey, we just got ourselves a replacement for Cam Curl should something happen to him. Hey, remember, Cam Curl got hurt last year, and you saw what happened to our defense, so we need another one of those guys. So we'll draft a player that we have no intentions of starting. Now, maybe they looked at him as a nickel. He could come right in immediately and be a nickel, a slot for us. How about you just draft an actual slot? There were plenty of those guys in the draft. How about you just draft an actual nickel corner? A guy that you look at in college and say, he's going to translate well to the NFL as a nickel, not a safety that you hope can play nickel. How about you just draft an actual nickel? You drafted a backup safety in the second round, a guy that you had no intentions of playing. Or maybe you did, and he scared you to death in the preseason by not being ready. And so, essentially, you drafted a backup safety in the second round. Who does that? For Darian Mathis, at best, is a 4th or 5th round pick. At best. You drafted him in the second round because you panicked because Daron Payne was going to be a free agent and you felt like you needed a defensive tackle and you needed depth and you moved on from Tim Settle and you moved on from Matt Ioannidis and you panicked. Well, you can't panic in the draft. You have a plan, you execute it, and you stick to the plan. But you know what, to me, and I'm going to leave it here, right? Because I don't need to belabor the point. You get what I'm trying to convey to you. Sam Cosmi may be the only guy that they've drafted, and Jahan Dotson. I firmly believe Jahan Dotson's a damn good football player. Dotson and Cosmi may be the only two guys that we've gotten in the first 2 days of the draft since Ronald has gotten here that are actual needle movers. That includes Antonio Gibson, De'Ami Brown, and Benjamin St-Juste, and drafted Ricky Stromberg, a guy they had no intentions of starting in the 3rd round this year. Ronald literally handled the draft like he just got here last year and he had signed a 5-year deal. Like, it's incredible the malpractice that was performed in last year's draft. For a guy that's supposed to be trying to save his job, he acted as if he knew something that we all didn't. I mean, it's amazing. And you'd love it if he left us a gift. The only gift that he may have left us on the way out is Sam Howell, but literally. And Brian Robinson's really good too. I don't want to leave him out. That 2022 draft has a chance to be really impactful. With Howell and Robinson and Dotson, it has a chance. We'll see what happens. But you know what sums up the Ronald Rivera era here in Washington and his failures as a personnel guy and bringing in Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney? That's all on Ronald's. That's all on his rap sheet. as is some of the infractions that he rolled up as he was here, right? You know what the biggest indictment on him and his staff from a personnel standpoint was? And I think it sums up why we're laughable right now and why this shit is a train wreck and we can't wait for it to end. Ronald Rivera, Martin Mayhew and company thought it was a good idea in the 2021 NFL draft to trade back into the 6th round, give up a 2022 5th round pick to do so, to snag a long snapper that I'm pretty sure nobody else was worried about and you could have gotten as an undrafted free agent, or you could have just spent one of your 7th round picks on. You had 3 of them that year. They were so worried about Cam Cheeseman, and they were so ready to move on from Nick Sundberg for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason was that Nick Sundberg couldn't continue to be the long snapper here, but that's nor here nor there. They decided to move on from him. They did. They panicked, and this is what they have done, and they've shown when they panic, they do some very reprehensible shit in the draft. They trade up for a long snapper that has proven he can't snap. And they gave up a 5th round pick in the following year's draft to do so. If that doesn't sum up the dysfunction of Ronald Rivera and his group as personnel evaluators, and his tenure here in Washington for that matter, I don't know what. You trade up, give up a 5th round pick in the next year's draft to trade back up into the 6th round to get a long snapper who ultimately can't snap. Good job, guys. Great job. In other news, I'm not going to keep you here long on this Tuesday. Not a ton to talk about, but I did tell you we were going to take a look at the TANKATHON and its results after 13 weeks of ball. So let's take a look. I mean, we're down bad. We should be looking at playoff standings right now and what we need to do to solidify a playoff spot. Instead, we're looking at what we need to do to solidify our top 5 pick. This hurts my heart. It really does. Some of you get your rocks off by this. I don't. I don't enjoy this, okay? Just so you know. Let's take a look, though. Again, everything we do has to be done with a purpose. We lose with purpose. Somebody else wins around us. It needs to impact us in a positive manner. So here we are. All right. As you can see, the good guys are currently located at number 4. And we're 4-9. And the beauty of this week being on a bye week is finally we don't have to bake in that we've played one more game than most teams in the league. Everybody will catch up to us, and everybody will be on a level playing field after this week. There will be no more bye weeks. Everyone would have played the same amount of games, and we don't have to play this. Well, when Washington has their bye game, we can just say, hey, everybody is where they're supposed to be. Thus, you see a team like Chicago, for instance, with their 2nd first-round pick, slightly behind us because we've played one more game than they did. Once we catch up to them, we'll have a chance to see what happens because, again, Chicago, as you can see, they have a lousy strength of schedule. All right? And if we end up tied with them, they're going to get the pick ahead of us. So understand, currently we're 4, but really we're 5 if the Bears lose their next game. Because the Bears, like I said, have a softer strength of schedule, meaning they need to pick more than we do. So right now, we're really 5th. But for the sake of this argument, we're 4th because we have a worse record by a half game than the Chicago Bears. So, anywho, the Bears will play this week. If they win, then we stay at 4. If they lose, they leapfrog us. We drop back to 5. Now, here's where things get interesting. We can't get any higher than 3. Okay, so any ideas of grandeur about this team ending up in the top 2 of the draft isn't happening. New England isn't winning another game. They got shut out last week at home. They don't have a quarterback. They're one of the worst teams in football right now, along with Carolina. Neither one of them are winning another game. So the Bears will have the number 1 overall pick for the second consecutive year, and the Patriots will have the number 2 pick. You can lock that in right now. Now, the Cardinals just beat the Steelers. Didn't see that coming. And they've been playing hard all year. Don't know their remaining schedule. Don't care. But they could win another game. And as you look at their strength of schedule, it's tougher than ours. They play in a division right now with San Francisco, Seattle, and now the Rams, who are all playing better. And their strength of schedule is probably going to be tougher than ours when it's said and done, right? So if we end up tied with them, we could leapfrog them. The highest we could get is 3, okay? I still don't know if Arizona's going to win another game, and I frankly think we're going to win one more game. I know that sounds foreign to you right now, but here's essentially how I see things playing out. We're going to end up with either the 4th, the 5th, or the 6th pick in the draft, okay? Because if you look at how things more likely than not are going to shake out, Arizona could win another game, or they could not win another game. I don't think Arizona's winning 2 more games, though, okay? They could win 1 more. I don't think they're winning 2 more. I could be wrong, right? But the likelihood is they're probably going to win 1 more game, if any. So there's a chance that Arizona could fall back and we could leapfrog them. But that would require us to not win another game, and I do think we're going to win another game. Now, here's the kicker, right? The Jets sit at 6. They sit at 4 and 8. You see their strength of schedule. It's pretty comparable to ours. That's going to fluctuate within their division, how the Patriots continue to do, how the Dolphins continue to do, how the Bills continue to do, will determine what their strength of schedule ultimately will be. Some of the teams that they've played on the schedule, if Houston continues to play well and teams like that, that's going to help bolster their strength of schedule as well. But forget about all that. We play the Jets. We can solve this right now. Somebody's getting their 5th win. Or somebody's getting a tie. Or both of us are getting a tie. We both stink enough to not score and have it be a 6-6 tie. But more likely than not, somebody's going to win that game. That team that wins that game is probably going to end up with the 6th pick in the draft. Okay? The Giants, I mean, let's be honest. You win 1 more game and you go all the way from 4 all the way to 9, pretty much. And now you're with the 5-win teams. And you leapfrog the Titans, the Jets, and the Giants, and the Bears, and you're now in a different group, right? But I've already told you, Tennessee's going to win another game. They should have won on Sunday. They're going to win another game, right? So I'm not worried about Tennessee. New Orleans is going to win, more games. Tampa Bay, all of those 5, they're going to win more games. So they're going to get pushed back. So don't concern yourself with those 5-win teams. They're going to win more games, right? Don't concern yourself with Tennessee. They're going to win more games. At least 2 more. If not 1 more for sure, right? So don't concern yourself with the Titans either. The Giants, I don't know if they're going to win another game or not. They probably won't. But Tyrod Taylor's coming back. They'll have a shot. They play the Packers this week. The Packers playing really good football, but not like they're unbeatable. The Eagles probably won't need that Week 18 game. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Let's just assume that the Giants win 1 more game, just like we potentially could. They're probably going to end up with a tougher strength of schedule. The Giants could, right? Theoretically speaking, we'll see what happens. And understand that the likelihood is Washington's going to end up anywhere from 3 to more likely than not 6. 7 is as far down as they can go. And that includes a win over the Jets. You lose to the Jets, and you're probably closer to 3 than you are 7. You beat the Jets, and you're probably closer to 7 than you are 3. That's what it's ultimately going to boil down to. Like, we don't have to sit here and, do all kinds of crazy mathematical equations to see what's going on here. That's what it's going to be. We'll win 1 or 2 more games. 2 more games puts you in a dangerous position. Now you're floating with and flirting with the possibility of being out of the top 10. I don't see us winning 2 more games. But stranger things have happened. You get this bye week, you come back, and the Rams, you catch them slipping, who knows? The Jets are the one I have circled as the most dangerous threat right now. They're the MDT, most dangerous threat, to giving us a dub down the stretch. We'll see what the hell happens, but we're 4th right now. We're 4th. And with Arizona playing solid football, who knows? We can get as high as 3. We could also drop as low as 7, I think. That Jets game is going to go a long way in determining that, though. Well, we'll see. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on installment of the Commanders Nightly News. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Next time, I'll be live with Protect Sports on his channel tonight. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys live on the Wednesday night. Until then, you know what it is. Take care. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35. The 30.